I had the privilege of talking to one of my favorite human beings in the entire world in Pastor Phil Munsey. Now, he's a husband, he's a father, he's a pastor, as I said, and he's a true leader. And even above all those things, he is just an amazing human being. He loves God with all his heart, and he loves people authentically. Like, he truly sees the best in everyone, and he knows how to pull the best out of anyone. And I'm excited because in this conversation, we talk about how your dream doesn't die, just your tenacity and try. And he'll really explain to you more about what that means, because God has given you a dream, and it's up to us to do some key things that he talks about in our heart and our mind, so that way we can actually see it come to pass. And so I only have one ask for you, and that simply is to share this link with one other person. After you get done with this interview, share it with some one other person to be a blessing to them, so that way they also can have their life changed. Because I know that this conversation is not only going to give you inspiration, but I believe it's going to give you revelation concerning the dream that's in your heart. So with that being said, let's get into our conversation that I had with Pastor Phil Munsey. Well, it is a huge pleasure and honor for me to have Phil Munsey on the Dream Lifestyle Podcast. Pastor, how are you doing?
Man, I'm wonderful. I'm really doing great because I am so excited and have been looking forward to being with you today.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I know there are so many things with your vast history of leadership, with your vast history of ministry leadership, especially, that we could go. But I want to dive straight in and just ask you, when did you start building your dream lifestyle?
Well, I'm in my 70th year. So this question really caused me to have to go back in time. Um, I guess, I'm thankful that I was raised in an environment that promoted, going for your dreams. And that was all really weaved into our church culture. Uh, and I remember when my parents got me my Bible, I have it right over here. I was 17 years old. Of course, I'd given my life to Christ as a child and received the baptism of the Holy Spirit when I was 9. But, growing up, I was in and out of my own head and trying to figure out who I was. But at 17, really made a commitment to Christ. And I'd read a book by Ann Kimmel called I'm Out to Change My World. And she was one of the speakers and voices out of the Jesus movement. And it really shook me up. It really just touched me. And I wrote in my Bible at 17 years of age, that would have been 53 years ago, I'm going to change my world. And from that point on, I just had a passion uh, to just, want to make a difference. And so I dedicated my life in every way I could. And that was my drive. I want to change the world. And so it began at 17. And that's when I began to follow my dreams.
Man, that's incredible. I think you have what I would consider to be maybe one of the greatest axioms, one of the greatest just sayings concerning dreams and chasing dreams. A lot of our audience, they are the kind of people that want to chase their dreams. And the quote that you said, and I'd love just you just speak into it. I want to just give you runway. The quote that you have that is just so amazing, so powerful is, "Dreams never die, just our tenacity and try." Can you elaborate on that, as you said that you started your journey at 17 to where you're now 53 years later doing amazing work? Can you just speak into what it looks like for us to chase our dreams?
Well, yeah. And I think, first of all, that you have to qualify what I call the difference between a dream and a scheme. And that was embedded in my dream right from the first, without even realizing what I was doing. And protecting and projecting my dream was in the statement, I'm out to change my world. So I have a question I pose to people the first thing I love to do always, I was eating at a restaurant last night and I said to the waiter, I said, what's your dream? Well, that just kind of always shocks people. Like, nobody ever asked that question anyway. It's like, well, and they kind of all paused. And many times it's like, I don't know. And then if you wait long enough, uh, it starts coming out of them and they start grasping for things that are in their heart. But I always ask this question. Here's how you know the difference between a dream and a scheme. Ask yourself, if it comes true, who benefits the most? Others or just you? And that's when you start separating the dream from the scheme. And so my dream, I knew it was of God. because it was about changing the world. It wasn't about, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a famous preacher. I want to whatever. It was really wrapped up in, I want to make an impact. I want to make the world better. So the first thing about a dream is that, is it about making the world better? Who will benefit the most if the dream comes true? And at that point, when you get that, that's when you have grasped the real dream, which I believe God gives everyone a dream. God gives us all a dream. Dreams are this GPS system that kind of it puts in us at birth. Paul told Timothy this way. He said, you are called, not according to your works, but with a holy calling before time began. Now that's so staggering. I mean, that eclipsed even the prophet Jeremiah when he says, when God said to him, while you were in your mother's womb, I called you. This goes before that, before the first tick-tock of eternity and time. God had already put in Timothy. He had already, through the bloodline of Adam and Eve, spun that DNA in motion. One of my favorite verses is in Acts 17, 26 and 27, when it says, who predetermined when you would be born, where you would be born, by whom you would be born through, so that you would hope and grope for that calling, that eternity, that dream that he put in your heart. So my belief is God has put a dream in everyone's heart. And when you can distinguish between a dream and a scheme, and you can recognize that you become a part of the solution to the world's pollution, that you have been given a task that's going to make the world better, and then you let that dream get a hold of you, then it takes a hold of you. And in doing so, you recognize that the dream has a life of its own. And that's why I always say, a dream never dies, just our tenacity and try. So when you get discouraged, when you get distracted, you get still and you listen. Another way of the scriptures tell us that God gives us the desires of our heart. And what I think that means is he gives us the desires that he wants us to desire. And when we desire the desires that he put in us to desire, then he gives us the desires that he desires us to desire. And yeah, don't make me repeat that. I get myself a little confused. But essentially, you don't go out looking for a dream. You actually uncover a dream that has already been embedded inside you. Desires that if you can get to them, if you can get to the core of them, are of God. And when you lose your way, you just need to go back and listen again. You just need to hear again the pounding of those dreams. Listen carefully, because the dream knows the way. The dream has a path that if you get on it and follow it, it will come to pass. So I'm a big, strong believer in that. And I have dreams that God has given me when I was 5 years old that took 50 years to manifest. Dreams that I even had forgotten about. I dreamed when I was 5 years old, I would tell people, when I grow up, I'm going to be a missionary and preach the gospel to South America. Well, 45 years passed, Trevón, and John Maxwell called me to go do a seminar to pastors in South America, specifically Venezuela. And I said, yes. I don't even remember what I was telling people at 5 years old. And I got to Venezuela and I stood in front of 1,800 pastors. And right before, as they were introducing me, the Holy Spirit reminded me that you said this is something that you would do when you were 5 years old. Now here you are 45 years later. Bam, you're here. Again, a dream never dies, just our tenacity and try. So I'm talking today to people that a dream is within their reach. Maybe we got sidetracked by a scheme. Maybe we got discouraged. But if we'll get our try back, and again, it goes back to Acts 17. He's saying, I determine when, where, by whom you would be born, in hopes that you would grope for that calling of which I've put inside you. So some people you don't need a dream. You just need to get your tenacity and try back, because the dream is already
Wow.
waiting to be fueled and lead you towards your destiny.
That is so powerful. I like that, where it's not so much us trying to manufacture our own dream. We're only just coming into alignment with our divine design. And I love how you framed it. And of course, it's obviously all scriptural based. Pastor, my question to you, and I was thinking about this as you were answering that, you have the privilege of being in a lot of major rooms, and not just being in a lot of major rooms. You are a mentoring voice to a lot of very influential people. Like you mentioned John Maxwell, which is only like one person that I know everyone would recognize. How does an individual stay focused? Like you mentioned, okay, I'm called to change the world, right? At 17, you knew that was the dream, that was your mission. And obviously the Bible tells us that, with more comes more responsibility, right? How does someone stay focused when they are big rooms, big crowds, big names that you used to watch on TV? Now all of a sudden you have their phone numbers, and obviously someone in your position where they call you for advice. How do you stay focused, Pastor?
Well, here's the angle I would look upon that. I think one of the most important things about your dreams and your and following your dreams is to keep your motives pure. Dreams can entice you and get you going down the wrong path without the right motives. And this is where a lot of dreams shipwreck. The reason why I believe that I've gotten into the room of many of the greats, and I would say this, I often tell people, not trying to be humble, I would say on one hand, um, I don't recognize my greatness, but I do recognize my ability to get in the right rooms with the right people. And that has come by recognizing um, my intent has always been to serve others. And I think that's one of the greatest things about a dream, uh, that you know your dream, you grow your dream, and then you sow your dream in the lives of other people. And that's really when it starts coming alive in you. For instance, my father was a pastor like yours, old school pastor. And when I told my dad I was called in the ministry, he said, "Great, you're going to come to church with me on Saturday while I'm studying. You're going to clean the restrooms." And I'm like, "Wait, just a second." I said, "God called me in the ministry, not to be a janitor." But what my father was teaching me was to develop a heart of a servant and to make sure that my motives were right. And that was very powerful. When throughout my life, I came to recognize that I kept my focus by keeping my motives right. I think that's what has kept me. Um, I will tell you this quick story. I was a pastor to the Crouches, who were the founders and presidents of the TBN Trinity Broadcast Network. Well, ultimately, Matt and Lori, their son, they were members of my church, faithful members to my church. And as a result of that, I was given an opportunity to be on TBN, probably way ahead of my time and probably beyond my talent, but I got on TBN. And there was a time when TBN had what they called revival. It was live services out of Nashville, Tennessee. And the network blew up. People were watching by the millions. Live, it's like, get there, get to the TV and see what was like. Well, they brought in some great preachers. And but in the midst of that, they brought in two or three new preachers that no one really had ever heard of. And I was one of them. And there was a couple others, like a guy named Mark Sharona and another guy by the name of T.D. Jakes. Yeah, that was his name. A little old pastor from West Virginia that pastored 300 people. And he got on too. And we were all new. And no one ever heard of us. But boom, man, after about a year, these guys, their ministry blew up. I got a lot of attention too. And people, it was a great platform. But honestly, Trevón, when it all ended, T.D. Jakes had his own book deals. Had his own TV program, took a church in Dallas that exploded. Mark Sharona, same thing. And me, nothing. No book deals, no. I was like, "Hey, God, what happened to me?" And, so every once in a while, I would be praying, and I had my prayer walk that I did in Majestic Canyon in California. And I'd pray, and every once I'd say, God, I love you and thank you for everything. But what happened? What happened to me? What happened to my big dreams that I'm going to change the world? And one day I was praying and I was crying and saying, God, when is that going to happen? And God said, are you ready to change the world? And man, all of a sudden I thought, this is it. This is my big moment. And I said, yes, God. And now I'm crying because I realized he used the very words that I had written in my Bible at 17. Do you want to change your world? And I said, yes, God. And then he said, do you care who gets the credit? Well, and that sobered me up real quick. And I was like,
Oh man.
and then I knew what to say. I knew the right thing to say is, of course, God, to you be the glory. You'll get all the credit. In my mind, I'm still thinking, yeah, but I'm going to get the book deal, right? I'm going to be on television, right? I'm all these things that happen. And of course, all this, and I'm going to give you the glory, right? And as I was kind of wrestling with saying sincerely, yes, God, I don't care who gets the credit. God then said to me, I want you to serve Tommy Tenney. Well, I knew Tommy Tenney. Some of your viewers may not know him, but Tommy Tenney wrote a book called God Chasers. It was based on an incredible experience in Houston, Texas, when God came into the service and the pulpit was thrown up in the air and split in half, and the service went for 7 or 8 hours. And that meeting literally shook the world. His book was published in multiple languages, millions of copies sold. But I was older than Tommy, and him and my father were the best of friends. And I was like, okay, all right. And then it really hit me. I will do that. And God said, I want you to serve him. So I called him. And as you would imagine, he was in Hollywood cutting a deal for his movie to be made about this, One Night with the King. So I went, found out where he was at. It was a room of producers and movers and shakers. And I just stood in the room until they all left. And he said, Phil, thanks for coming. Why are you here? I said, Tommy, I had an encounter with Jesus today. And he told me I need to serve you. And Tommy said, oh, man, Phil, you're my friend. I'm not going to let that happen. I said, Tommy, I'll never forget this. I said, I'm as serious as cancer. I'm going to, on my own time, in my own nickel, I'm going to carry your briefcase and I'm going to serve you. And it was awkward for him, but I did that. I served him. I learned what it's like to be around someone very popular because people would ignore me. People would walk over me, literally like I was invisible to get the Tommy. And I'm like, and I learned, and during that process, I learned how to help someone else make their dreams come true. Within a year or so, that's when Joel Osteen walked into my life by accident. And God put us together. And for 25 years, 10 of those years, I volunteered for Joel Osteen. And in doing so, I learned that if I don't care who gets the credit, there is a very short line to those who are willing to not care who gets the credit. You can get so quick, so fast down the road. Unbelievable. It's what put me in the rooms of the great. And the other line is pretty long, and that is, my dream has to be all about me. And so I would say what kept me focused, what kept me fervent, what kept me in the game, Trevón, is that I was not afraid to serve somebody else's dream. And that put me in the room of the greats. And as a result of that, that's how I think I outlasted so many others that started with the dream, but their tenacity and try got sidetracked.
Wow. I really thank you for that story because I resonate with that story in terms of the internal conflict where it's, God, I want to achieve this thing in your name, but then you wrestle with the humanity of, well, God, the book deal, right? Like, God, you're going to advance the platform, right? You're going to do this, you're going to do that.
Yeah.
And so I genuinely appreciate that story because I can only imagine you get on a platform like a TBN with like these legends and they go off and do great things. And so I can only imagine how that felt internally. And as you said, now, with the long standing that you've had in the game, very well, might I add, considering, can you talk to us about along with the heart to serve other people, the heart that you have for your motives to stay pure, where you're comfortable being around big names or you see them as people and everything. Can you let us in on some of the habits or disciplines that have helped you in that process? Because I can imagine that, you didn't just talk to God that one time and then automatically you were just like, nope, I'm okay with serving other people. Like, can you talk to us about some of the disciplines that help you develop your character to become the kind of person that's very comfortable with, no, I'm serving and helping somebody else's dream come true?
Well, it goes without saying, your personal devotion is so important. And I know everyone says that and it's important, but I do thank God that um, I would say one of the things I respect about you, and I've told you when we did recently, you and I did a conference together, and I was just so impressed by your speaking and the way you articulated, but also your focus on discipline and just your whole appearance, the way you live your life. From a physical standpoint and so on, I admire your discipline. Me, I'm more of an emotional, feely type of person. I have to get myself all inspired just to go take out the trash, right? I mean, like I'm all like into inspiration. So the ideal of just get up, do my workout, go to the gym, do all that. Oh man, that doesn't come easy for me. I'm just not that way. And I admire people that have that discipline. So I got to be honest and tell you, like, I don't go to the gym. I wish I did. I don't do a lot of the disciplines that at now it's coming into my 70th year, I regret. But I did, I did know how to pray, and I did know and develop what I would call, actually, my prayer life went in a different dimension pretty quick. It went from discipline to desire. And I felt this way about my prayer life. And this may be coming from a different angle for most. But when I miss my time of prayer, I don't feel guilty. I feel cheated. I don't feel it's an obligation. I see it as an opportunity. And maybe there are some of our listeners today that, maybe struggle with getting the disciplines down. And I get that. But somehow I still find that I found a way to want to do these things from a place of desire, not duty. And that's what's kept me in it. Now, again, my lack of being able to be a person that has those kind of disciplines is a weakness of mine. But I still think that people that maybe are more like me, you can flip the script and find yourself doing things. And again, I think that if your dream is so strong, your dream will push you past just duty and discipline, and it will propel you by desire. And so
So
that's kind of been mine, because I have to say that it's my desire to be used of God and my desire to change the world that has gotten me to do the right things over and over again. And so that's just kind of that's my temperament.
I love it because, oftentimes you're right. Most of the times when people hear a word like discipline, they immediately go to, do you go to the gym? Do you eat right? Are you regimented with your schedule? But I would actually argue that how you just articulated it, that's what true discipline is. At least if I'm sure I could have Bible to back this up, but where it's, hey, I'm taking things beyond just a duty. It's my desire to talk to God. It's my desire to be obedient, because I think a part of, at least discipline is just simply, hey, I'm being obedient to God's word. I'm being obedient to when it says, I'm taking care of myself. I'm obedient to when it says to spend time with him and everything. So I would actually argue, Pastor, the way you articulated it is really the lens at which all of us should define discipline, where it's not just, okay, are you doing things? Because there are plenty of people who have great big muscles but have no kind of prayer life. Right? They have a great eating habit, great schedules, but they don't really hear from God the way they could to walk out their dream. And so I think, like, the way you said it in terms of obedience, can you speak into that a little bit about the obedience part? So where it's, okay, my prayer life, it goes from duty to desire. I hear from God. Can you speak to us just free floor about just the idea, the concept of just being obedient to what God tells us to do?
Yeah, I think that again just goes back to, um, you know, just the ideal of this is not my dream is bigger than me. It's not just about me. And when you embrace the bigger purpose of God, and in doing so, I think you have the ability to stay focused, to be disciplined, and to uh, you know, keep doing the right thing and to be obedient. Part of my prayer life is I really bought into the Lord's Prayer as my guide. And I to this day, and I've been doing it, I would say now for maybe close to 40 years, where I don't get out of bed until I say the Lord's Prayer. And then I do it again slowly, and then just walk through the principles. And of course, one of them, it starts out, "Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done." And that second phrase after worship and acknowledging God really sets the tone for my life. It's all about thy kingdom come and thy will be done. And this is where again my dream and all of the goals that I have are really wrapped up in that statement, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. So it's really all about being obedient to God. And then when you've seen that obedience breeds such great success, when you recognize that, uh, then it feeds on itself. I mean, whenever you obey God, God blesses you. And then when God blesses you, that's because you're obedient. You just start this, and one of the oversimple things I tell to people about being successful is do the right things, do things right. And when you don't know what to do the next right thing. So it's a pattern, it's repetition. And so obedience to me is just doing the right thing, doing things right, and then being in the rhythm of when you don't know what else to do, just do the next right thing. And all of a sudden, here's a line I love to say. This is one of my theme songs. Gradually, then suddenly, from nowhere to now here. And that's how it happens. So I think that, every day when someone says, man, how do I want my dreams. How do I know it happens? Hey, just keep doing the right things and do things right. And when you don't know what to do the next thing right, gradually, then suddenly, from nowhere to now here. I'm a big believer in that. And here's the thing. It goes back to the statement, you know, dreams never die, just your tenacity and try. I will lay my life down about the statement I'm about to make. I will die for this. I will die on this mountain, on this statement. If God gives you a dream, it will come to pass. When, how, those are the only variables. And I can tell you how and when rarely matches our mental map. But if you stay true to the fact that if God gave me the dream, and if I stay walking before God, humbling in obedience, it cannot be denied. I've seen it. I've seen where dreams that I had. We just talked about the dream of preaching in South America. I'll give you another quick one. When I was 14 years old, I dreamed of being a radio disc jockey. Now, this is 50 years ago when radio disc jockeys, nothing about. They were kingmakers. All right. There was no internet. There was no social media. It was all radio, and television only had 3 stations. So if a disc jockey played your music, they could make or break you. So my day, disc jockeys were the big thing. So I dreamed so I set up a little radio studio in my basement, mic dropping from the ceiling, a turntable, 2 turntables hooked up to just 2 speakers that were into that mic. And I did the Mike Phillips show every day after school. Now, my name is Philip Michael Munsey, and you had to have a radio name. And my radio name was Mike Phillips. So I'd come every day. I had newspaper clippings. And I would do a show with commercials and everything. And I would, hey, welcome to the Mike Phillips Show. You got the dime, I got the time. Give me a call for a special request line. I would just do this. And then I would read news clippings. And when I was 15 years old, I got accepted at a vocational school that would give me credit for my high school diploma to be literally trained to be a radio disc jockey working at a radio station and a TV station that was a public broadcasting network. Oh my goodness. It was a dream come true. But my dad felt called to start a Christian school that year. And I had to go to it. And when I did, I disqualified. Out of 300 students, I was one of 12 selected. And I was disqualified because I didn't go to a public school. I went to a Christian school. Oh, man, I was so mad at my parents. I was mad at God. I was like, my dream shattered. And so 1 year passed, 2 years passed. And by the time I was 17, I surrendered everything to God and I let all of that go. And I followed my call into the ministry and I was on my way to my destiny, right? Well, one day at a Night of Hope event at Yankee Stadium, 50,000 sold out. I found myself, without realizing it, being the host of the Night of Hosts on Joel Osteen Radio, the biggest radio station you could ever want to be worldwide, right on Sirius XM. And I just got done interviewing phenomenal pastors. In fact, your dad was one of them. And as I put the earphone down and I was finished with that radio program, I heard the Holy Spirit say to me, there. That's all he said, there. And immediately I went back to being a 14-year-old kid, dreaming of being a radio disc jockey. And I stopped. I stopped God and I said, no, God. Being a radio disc jockey, that was just a pipe dream. Oh, man, I even forgot about it. And God said, I didn't. I put that dream in your heart. And you know what?
Wow.
You're doing it right now. This is how convicted I am of the fact that if God gives you a dream, it will never die. Just our tenacity and try.
Man, what a story. I love that. That is an amazing story. Like the faith to even, like you said, set up your room, right? Do the whole intro like it's a real thing. And then I can imagine the disappointment. The years go by. And then just like you said, that moment where after you get done on the biggest platform you could possibly be on, for the Holy Spirit just say there. I can only imagine just the level of fulfillment in that moment. And I think a lot of that, to your point, or at least to what you said earlier, is just accredited to, hey, I'm focused on providing value. I'm focused on serving. I'm focused on making sure my motives are pure and I'm just being obedient. And so that way, a lot of us, I'm sure, when we transition from our prayer life to being a duty to a desire, that we'll just start bumping into the things that God had given us when we were young, just because we're just walking out our path. Pastor, to kind of pivot our conversation a little bit, I want to get into asking more about like kind of character traits and things of that nature, because God has made all of us different. We're wired differently, right? We're built differently. Now, as I said earlier, you are a influential voice to those that are extremely influential. And what I'd love to know from your coaching seat, from you, as you know, you being in the skybox, you being in the ear of those going out and doing battle and things of that nature, can you share with us just some, whether it be unique traits of just some of these influential people that you know, that you mentor and you coach, and you like, can you let us in on just some of those character traits of what helps them be who they're called to be?
Well, so you're asking me what I see in them and are
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think, I think probably the first one that comes to me, and it's a very popular buzzword, and I don't know whether we always understand what we mean when we say it. I think integrity is crucial. I think integrity and here's the way I see integrity. Integrity is actually originally a mathematical term. Integrity means whole, In other words, 1 is an integrous number, whereas 3/4 is not. So integrity is wholeness. And so in light of that, here's the way I define integrity. It's when what you say you mean, and what you say and mean you do. It's the wholeness of intent, content, and movement. In other words, what I say and the motive behind what I say and what I do agree in one. So I think integrity is the most important characteristic because it's very easy to become divided, where you say one thing and live another. You say one thing, but then you don't follow up or keep your word. Or you mean to do something, but you never do it. Or you have the motive, but you never have the, the action. So to me, sustainability is about integrity. And I've met a lot of people who have a lot of talent, and their talent and charisma has gotten them in the room, has gotten them a platform, but it's integrity that will keep you sustainable. And so I think that becomes very important. So as young leaders, we have to ask ourselves, be careful what I say. And what I say, one scripture says, my words are tried as it were in a furnace 7 times. I think that's a proverb. So, think about what you say. Don't be flippant, and try to recognize that what you say and then what you do needs to be one. And don't let there be a gap between what you say you're going to do or what you say you are and what you actually do and what you really are. Don't let that gap widen, and it can easily widen. And then it catches up with you. And then I think the motive behind what you say and what you do, it needs to be carefully examined, because real quick, even as many of the greats that I've been in the room with, I can tell you, when I was working and doing interviews for TBN, I think I estimated that I may have interviewed maybe 2,000 people over 30 years, because we were doing 4 guests an hour. Or rather, in a 2-hour show, I do 4 guests, 15-minute segments, and I did multiple, hundreds. And so most of those people would be pastors, leaders, or influential people, celebrities, so on. And so I have been in the green room where it became easily detectable for me to see that there was a gap between their talk and their walk. And many times I would be confused, and many times I would think, wow, I guess it really doesn't matter. And I've seen people move quick and fast, but I've seen them fall quick and fast. And so over the years, I would say, I'm not impressed anymore. At my age, I'm not impressed anymore with people that have a fast-growing church or have come into fast platforms of exposure and popularity. I'm not anymore. I used to be impressed, and I used to be intimidated. I used to compare and think, man, wow, how could that happen? And that's unbelievable. And then get in the room and recognize that there's a gap in their character. Now I don't. In fact, I feel sorry for people that move quick and fast and get a platform beyond their character, because I've seen the pain that they end up going through. And so I think it becomes very important that as a young dreamer, that you really make sure that you match all 3: hands, head, hands, heart. These are I deal in concepts, right? All truth to me comes in concepts. So what's in my head, what's in my heart, and what I do with my hands are content, intent, movement, right? What I say, I do, and what I say and do, I mean. And those, to me, that's the number one characteristic that I think all dreamers need to embrace and go after.
That's amazing. No, thank you for that, because I definitely agree that your description of integrity, I think is just so spot on. Just that wholeness. I like what you said when what you say you mean, and what you say and mean you do.
Yeah.
I think that's that right there. That'll change the world
Yeah.
right there.
That's
If
right.
everyone listening just
That's
did
right.
that, right?
That's right. That's right.
Pastor, you are one. You are just you know how I feel about you and just your life, everything that you've done, the way in which you've poured into me, and I know others. Can you let us behind the curtain of just what does it cost to be you? Because you have you are the type of person where you enter a room, it lights up a room. You are the kind of person that you can encourage anybody, you can build faith in anybody, right? But what does that cost you? What does it cost to be Pastor Phil Munsey?
Oh, wow. I wrestled with that when you gave that to me. I don't know uh, totally how to answer that, except I would tell you the few things that I struggle with that I think uh, is what you may mean when you say, what's it cost to be Phil Munsey? I know to be an encourager means that you have to step out of yourself, and truly there's a difference between flattery and encouragement. I say it this way: flattery expects, encouragement respects. And so I've seen people who try to imitate encouragement by just being flattering with their words and heaping words of, oh, you're this, you're that, you're that, you're this, you're that. And for a while it can capture somebody's attention, but essentially it fades and falls away quickly. Encouragement requires you. I say there's three things that make up true encouragement, and that is you are deliberate. It's something that you have thought about before. It's premeditated. Number two, it's descriptive. When you're a true encourager, you're a mirror. You're reflecting back to them what you see. So you don't just say, oh, you're a fantastic preacher. Oh man, what is it about their preaching? The more descriptive you are, the more weight your encouragement has. And then there's also a bit of prophetic uh, declaration. This is who I see who you are, and this is how I see this is what you can be. Encouragement is a really emptying of yourself and giving out. And oftentimes encouragement costs what you would love to get yourself. You're giving it to other people. Because I can tell you the dark side of encouragement is when you feel you don't get it back. The dark side of not caring who gets the credit is feeling used and abused. Those are your dark sides. Those are the nights where you can't sleep at night and you say, I'm so tired of helping this person reach their dream. What about mine? Those are those moments when you get weak and your humanity is pulsing with pain and pity. And you think, yeah, I don't care who gets the credit, but at some point, you feel like that there are people getting credit for what you do, and they're taking credit for what you've done. And those are moments that it costs you. And you have to wrestle with that until those voices die, until that pain numbs. And that's when you have to go back to saying, God, it doesn't matter if I never get this back. I'm going to do it because you called me to do it. And there are many times when I have felt abused. I have felt used, and I have felt like this is not fair and it's not right. And then you wrestle with that until you come back again to this. No, God, really, I don't care who gets the credit. And so it has cost me selfish ambition. It has cost me recognition and rewards that I think it's like Satan did to Jesus. Everything Satan tempted Jesus with in the wilderness was ultimately his, and it was ultimately manifested. It was when and how. And so sometimes what it cost me to stay as an encourager for 53 years is that it's cost me to be able to wrestle with the fact that there will be times where I want what I'm encouraging other people, what I'm lifting other people, and learning to stand back and say, I'm going to give this with no strings attached and trust God that he's going to fulfill this. And then one day you wake up and you're in the room and you say, wow, how did I get here? And you got here one encouragement at a time. I would tell you this, even the greats, and I could name drop greats, they need encouragement. And when you're in the room with the great, listen, encourage and listen. That's not the time to pitch your dream. It's not the time to tell them what you think and try to expose yourself for, like, this is my opportunity to tell them who I am and what I'm about. Listen, everyone likes, I'm going to give you a little secret. Everyone likes to talk about themselves. So if you can encourage people, like you're doing me today, this program is almost over, right? We could go on for 2 or 3 hours because you're talking about me, right? Well, hopefully you're getting something out of it besides just, stats on how many books I've sold or how many conferences I've spoke at. And so it is when you learn how to ask the right questions. And then always, even the greats need encouragement. And always be prepared that when you're in a room and you're going to be in a room, you're going to be with an opportunity to be around people that you want to be like. Because when I ask people what their dream is and to help them find it, I always say, who do you admire? Who do you look up to? And what is it about them that you're drawn to? Because that's telling them a little bit about what's inside them and their own dream. And then I tell them, whenever you're in the room with great people like that, be willing to listen and also be willing to encourage them and be descriptive, not like, oh man, you're the more you can be descriptive about them, the more that gives you entrance, and encouragement becomes the currency you use to develop relationships with movers and shakers.
Man, that's a mic drop if I've ever heard one. That was really, thank you for that. And I have to say thank you just as we close out. Thank you for paying that price. Because I've told you, like, my life would look radically different if not for your encouragement, if not for you paying the price, if not for you wrestling internally and winning that internal battle. And I'm certain that there's so many like me. And so I thank you really, not just for taking this time, but thank you for just being who you are. Because, all of what I'm doing today, I know I could directly tie to conversations, voice notes that we've had. And I'm just extremely grateful. That's why I was just, this podcast was unique because most podcasts, it's, okay, let the world kind of hear from whoever I'm listening to. This was kind of like hey, I'm letting the world in on just a conversation you and I would have had regardless. And I'm just so grateful just for the wisdom. So to what you said, I definitely got a whole bunch of wisdom out of this, and confirmation. And I'm just so grateful that you took time.
Beautiful. I'll tell you a quick story. I used to read letters. I was Oral Roberts' pastor, and I used to read letters that Billy Graham would write to him because his handwriting was not legible. So he would dictate it to his assistant, and they would type it up. And so Oral would have Billy Graham's letter in his hands, and I would read the typed version. And I try not to pay attention to it. It was personal, but there was one line I'll never forget. Billy Graham said to Oral Roberts, "I wish I'd have made friends with younger preachers because all of my preacher friends have died." Well, I made a commitment to pursue relationships with people like you. So it's deliberate because, and I think that it's my joy. The greatest joy I could get is to do this again because I love you. I love your heart. I believe in you. And I believe that the voice God has given you for others your age and younger is the future. And I would give my life to be a part of your team as a cheerleader, as a coach, as a friend, in whatever capacity. I have complete confidence in you. And plus, it's a little selfish too, because as God expands you and you continue to, you and many others, I will have been your friend. and so I will say, remember me. And you'll say, oh yeah, I
Oh
do
my
remember.
goodness. You are too
So
funny.
anyway,
You are absolutely, absolutely, Pastor. Well, listen, for all of you who are watching or listening, if you got value out of this conversation, which I'm sure you did, I only have one ask for you, and that simply is for you to share this conversation with one other person that you know, love, and trust, someone that you also want to see win. All right, because again, you sharing it can change a life, and it's a simple action that you can do. We want to reach as many people as possible so that way they can achieve their dream. So with that all being said, always remember your dream is possible as long as you are willing to grow for it. And we will see you on the next episode.